Welcome, everybody. This is our second installment of tagTwenty. My name is Tracy Pager, and I'm joined by Gina Goolsby today, and we're so happy to have you here. I'm excited to introduce you guys all to a tool that I believe, and Gina too, can truly transform the way your team works together. We'll be talking all things DiSC and describing it as a shared language to understand communication styles, understand motivations. But ideally, the whole goal of this is to reduce friction points within our teams because we can understand each other in a unique way. At Tag Leaders, just to give you a little background on who we are, we specialize in turning managers into leaders that people actually want to follow. And we do this by growing teams to build stronger communication, leadership presence, and trust. And DiSC is a foundational tool that helps us do that. Anything you want to add there, Gina?
Yeah, my big thing with assessments, I always like to call out as a leadership coach and trainer, is that it should not just be that, right? I've seen too often times where teams will take it and then you forget about it. And so I feel like the true value is in having the conversation. Again, it's and not labeling it per se, because even with Clifton Strengths and other assessments, it's so important to just use it as a tool and have the conversation and continue to have the conversation rather than just a one and done and label. That's my big caveat that I like to share.
That's right. So a one and done with anything, but especially leadership development, is a little bit weak. And so we always like to share the assessment, have a group debrief, and then we continue the conversations either through workshops or through one-to-one coaching or small group coaching. And that's a great call out, Gina.
Yep.
A little bit more about Tag Leaders. We co-founded Tag Leaders back in January. And we work with organizations of all sizes to help managers increase self-awareness, lead with confidence, and create more connected and keyword here, high-performing teams. At the crux of it, that's what Gina and I love to do, is we work individually and with teams to create more high performance. And assessments really do give us that mirror to reflect back our behaviors and provides individuals and teams with that self-awareness to create change. And so when we think about any behavior change, we want to start with self-awareness first. And assessment tools such as the DiSC really does this job effortlessly, right? And so in today's workshop, we hope we give you the ideas of how you could immediately work this, apply it with your team. And maybe we give you some ideas on how your organization or your team may want to bring in an assessment like DiSC.
Thanks, Tracy. And I'll add too, this is great in life as well. You know, my husband went through DiSC in his company. I took it when Tracy and I formed Tag Leaders so we can understand communication styles. So it is such a great tool, not only at work, but also at home. But this is something I want to focus on is we've seen this all too often with individuals and teams where we've coached. It is the communication fumbles that can quietly derail a team. We all know this, and there's even stats around it. So this is where we're going to start, is looking at something that every team, every individual deals with and manages through effectively, hopefully, right? Having the tools to be able to look at the communication breakdowns. And you've probably seen it or felt it. The email, I mean, I've seen this, emails that come off colder than maybe intended, even in my last corporate job. The meeting that went into circles, right? Like we're in different communication styles. We want to get either things done or some want to talk through it and collaborate a little bit more. So we've all experienced it, and hopefully maybe that's why you're here today, is to really find out how can I leverage this tool? How can we use and have this as a conversation to move things forward productively? A Salesforce study, and Tracy brought this to my attention recently. I thought it was so high. A Salesforce study found that 86% of employees and execs blame poor communication or a lack of collaboration for workplace failures. That's pretty high, 86%. That's most of us. So here's the breakdown. It's typically not bad intentions, right? It's not the intent, but it's really the impact. So when you look at communication breakdowns, it's mismatched styles and unspoken assumptions. And so when Tracy and I started working together as partners and and you'll see soon our communication style, which quadrant we're in for DiSC, is, we're opposite. We're different in our communication styles. And so just getting it out there to understand what Tracy is and what am I. Tracy's a D and an I, and I am an S. And so she'll get to what those mean. But it's good to, from that lens of getting the information, understanding the style, and again, not labeling it, but having the conversation. But this kind of lays out the most common times or reasons when information is lost in translation. But again, I go back to most communication issues aren't about intent or poor intent. They're about a style mismatch. And the whole point with DiSC is not to change who we are, right? Knowing that Tracy is more of a D, like a fast, focused, results, skips the fluff type of communicator. And I am more of a clarity, calm, context, relationship. The whole intent is not for us to change who we are and how we communicate. It's to better understand how the other person best communicates so that I don't, or Tracy doesn't take it, right, get offended by it. So that's the whole point. But I'll pass it to you now, Tracy.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything you've said. And I'll even add in that I had a lunch conversation back on Monday around multi-generational workplaces and how that can also lead to a communication breakdown. Someone in Generation X may communicate differently than a boomer. And we see this time and time in a workplace. And so the goal is to figure out how others communicate so we don't take it personally and we can start to understand them a little bit better. That's right. So let's get into the nitty gritty here. I'm going to walk you through what all of the letters mean. And then, Gina already kind of gave a little highlight. We're going to do a little analysis between Gina and I. And I want you to imagine your colleagues, your team members, your organization, and start to think about how this could be valuable for you. So DiSC is a simple and powerful framework, and it helps us to understand 4 primary behavioral styles. Each of these styles reflects how we tend to respond to problems, people, pace, and procedures. So I'll say that one more time. The DISC is they're the 4 behavioral styles, but they tell us how we're going to respond to problems or stress, how we respond to people, pace, and procedures. And I think that's a really valuable place to chime into. And so we'll start with D. The folks who have a prominent D are folks that are direct, decisive, and results-oriented. They like change, they like to move fast, and they like outcomes. I really resonate with this one. A high D leader may ask, what's the bottom line and how can we move forward with this? We can all picture someone in our minds when I describe it like this. I want you to now picture someone that's the influence, which is the I, which is sociable, enthusiastic, relationship focused. They bring energy to the room, and they're really great at inspiring and bringing others along with their idea. You may often hear them say, hey, let's brainstorm, or this could be fun. And remember, fun is always that relative term, right? I've said that before. Steadiness. This is something that Gina really resonates with. And this is about the style of dependency, of loyal, of great team members. I want you to picture a few colleagues, either past or present, that relate to this. They thrive on stability, collaboration, and thoughtful communication. You may hear them ask, how will this affect the team? Or is everyone on board? And those are such valuable questions to think about. And last is conscientiousness. Man, I've had to say that a few times just to make sure I said it right. These styles are analytical, detail-oriented, and focused on doing the right thing. They value accuracy, logic, high standards. And so you can see as we're describing these, you can picture someone very differently that may have a dominant DIS or a C. People in the conscientiousness space, I knew it, or may say things like, can you clarify that process? So they're really detail-oriented and process-focused, and we need people like this in our lives. So why does any of this matter? Right? Knowing our DISC style, like Gina said, helps us collaborate better with other people. And we are not doing our work in silos. We're oftentimes collaborating with stakeholders, clients, and customers. And so we need to understand how they communicate, and they can understand how we can communicate. We're going to have a better shot of moving forward and not taking things personally. Remember, the whole point of bringing in an assessment is to create more effective, productive teams. And we see this time and time again with our clients, is this interpersonal communication breakdowns drag the energy. It's something people focus on when they could be focusing on something more productive. And they have every right to, because it stirs up a lot of emotions when we have these communication breakdowns.
Yep.
Anything you'd like to add to that, Gina?
No, well said. I think that's good. Okay, here's our maps. This is what it looks like when you take the assessment. You understand self, right? You understand, okay, what style am I? How does this show up? How does this help me? And also, how does this might hinder me, right? If I'm working closely with somebody who has a different style. But this is a side-by-side for Tracy and I. So this is just to give you a visual example when we took it. And after we took it, being the coaches that we are, we kind of self-coached through our session, but we broke it down. Everyone has a unique map. So that's the point here. The outcome of these assessments is, how can we best work together? So it's almost like answering that question, how can we best work together? So when you look at mine on the right-hand side, you'll see around it, right? Support, collaboration, stability, just like Tracy mentioned. But back to it not being a label, more of a conversation. Tracy and I talked about it. We met. We talked about, how does this show up in, let's say an example is we want to roll out a workshop for a new client. Well, I'm going from my lens, I'm going to take my time, right? I'm going to look at context. What does this client want to get out of it? What problem are we solving? Let's slow down to speed up. So that's important to understand. Tracy knows this about me. And then on Tracy's side, on the influence, dominance, the action, results, enthusiasm, I'm not going to take it personally, right? When she's like, well, let's just get rolling, right? Like, this is all great, Gina, but let's get this roll into the client. But her energy, her persuasive, her ability to act is very valuable. So again, the difference is actually a benefit for us as I like to say, powerful partnership. So it is good to look at the differences in how we complement one another. But again, this is a great way just to show you maps side by side, because when you take it, yes, that builds stronger self-awareness, but really the power is in understanding others and how do I interact with others through this lens. And it's constantly talking about it too. We're not changing our styles. We're just better working with the other individual and how we can enhance the partnership. So that's an idea of what the side by side would look towards, and answering that question, how can we work better together or differently together? And it's also helpful too when you look at tasks. So when we're a team of two and on the leadership team. So if there's certain tasks where Tracy will thrive more rather than me, that's okay. Let's talk about it. And, and she can run off with those certain tasks that are going to be more energizing to her.
1,000%. And I'll add a few things to that. When we're facilitating the DiSC assessment for our clients, we're walking them through this. We're not going to keep this a surprise, right? We want the team members to know the scope of how the other person is showing up. And so when we're facilitating workshops around DiSC, we're getting teams together, we're getting partners together. It's a very interactive experience for a team so that they truly understand themselves, they understand their colleagues, they understand what communication style may work best when working with that colleague, and what not to take personally, because it's not about them, it's about their communication style. So you can see how this is a team bonding experience, but also one that can really change the way teams interact with each other and communicate with each other. Another point I wanted to mention would be, when we add someone to our team, I'm probably going to want them to be a C. And I'll tell you why. It would allow Gina and I to do what we love to do best and communicate in the style that we do, but then also bring somebody in that's going to be challenging us, that's going to be in the accuracy in the process space. So we also want to think about how we can balance out a team. I can imagine if there was a team with all Ds or a DI or a DC, that could be challenging. So we want to think about balancing out a team, but then if it's unbalanced, how can we work together knowing that we are more similar?
Yeah, good point.
Anything else around this slide?
Yeah, I think we're going to move on. We only have 5 minutes left. 20 minutes goes real quick, everybody. So, but we want to leave minutes at the end to answer any questions that you have.
That's right. So how do assessments tie to business outcomes? And I want you guys to really start to, again, personalize this information for yourself. It's not fluff. It's not just a nice thing to do for colleagues. This really does change the way we work with our colleagues and with our organization. And so first up is team performance. And I want to give you a little stat that I found interesting, is that 72% of business leaders report that effective communication has boosted their team's productivity. This comes from Market Inspector Workplace Communication from 2025. So it's a very recent stat to share. Again, 72% of business leaders say that when they have effective communication, their team's productivity increases. And so when we think about that as a business outcome, it allows their team to focus on that bottom line, to be driving the business forward, not stuck in the communication pattern that's not working. So miscommunication is one of the top reasons for an underperforming team. And so that's something to think about. In addition, it's going to equip leaders to lead with self-awareness, right? Assessments aren't just self-awareness tools, they're business tools, but we have to start somewhere. And that's that self-awareness piece. And assessments like DiSC give leaders a mirror to understand how they show up and how others show up and how we can work together more efficiently. We can accelerate growth, right? Tools like DiSC make strengths and gaps more visible. Once we know what we change, we can work with Gina and myself to personalize that and move things forward. And last up, we know it's going to improve communication. It's truly an energy drag. It's a time suck when we have these interpersonal challenges. I almost like to think about communication issues as like a time vortex suck, right? As opposed to being able to communicate effectively, and then we move forward from there.
Yep. All right. We only have a few minutes left. So as we wrap up, just want to emphasize the key takeaways. Number one, understanding that DiSC isn't just about knowing your own style, building that self-awareness. It's, I would say, most importantly about the knowledge that translates into better understanding others, better communication, collaboration, team performance, again, not only for work, but also at home. And from assessments to team transformation assessments, even beyond DiSC, we offer Clifton Strengths, Energy Leadership Index, and Profiler 360. Through the team transformation workshops, we listed here different workshops that we lead, that we love being able to lead leaders through. And I know we only have 2 minutes left, Tracy. So I just wanted to thank everybody for joining our second tagTwenty. We're always open to feedback, incorporating specific topics that are going to be helpful. So it's not just about assessments. Our last one was around critical thinking, and we're also going to have emotional intelligence in the future, other topics that are top of mind. But with that, Tracy, can you take everybody off mute so we can answer any questions that everybody has? We also include the QR code on here to book time with us, because we know that this is fast and furious, 20 minutes. So if you want 30 minutes to have a free discovery session to talk about whether DiSC or others would be beneficial, then scan the QR code. But we'll give you all some time to ask questions. And I'm happy to stay on. Tracy, I know that you have to drop right at 20, but I'm happy to stay on too to answer any questions anybody has. But thank you, everybody, for joining today.
And so that QR code is just a link to our calendars. We'd love to continue the conversation to see how an assessment may work for your team or for your organization. Like I said, DiSC is wonderful for a team leadership workshop. I can see that working really well.
Yeah.
Well, we did this in record time, Gina. We even have a minute to spare. We must have been talking fast.
I know. I'll look at the comments. Any comments, questions?
Well, feel free to email both Gina and myself. We're going to follow up with today's presentation, so you have this handy. Maybe you'll want to share with one of your colleagues who maybe is a decision maker on how to bring in leadership development. And to add to that, assessments are a great way to the entry point of leadership development. We don't have to start off with a 6-month program. We can start off with an assessment. And we can start to build from there. And so we invite you to reach out to us. And thank you so much for joining today. Have a wonderful afternoon.